Alright, I got a few more left here, but I just want to recap. What I've been doing is, you got the intakes, they're here and here. I turn the motor over until the intake valve comes up and then closes. Once it closes, then I put that rope in there. And then I turn the motor over until I can't turn it no more with the rope in there. Then I take the rocker arms and the push rods out. And then I take this socket and extension and I put it over the retainer and lock like that, and I give it 5 good whacks with that big hammer. That seems to be the magical number for mine, for them to break loose, because I've actually bent that tool trying to break it loose with just the tool. That don't work. So 5 good whacks with the hammer and it breaks the lock and the retainer loose. Then I put the tool on there and then I push the spring down and it pops off the retainer off the lock. You take your locks out. I'm calling this the retainer and I'm calling these the locks. I might have that backwards, I don't know. But anyway, I push it down, I take the locks off, and I pull the retainer and the spring off and set it to the side. And then I take a pair of needle nose and I get just below there and carefully pull that seal up and then slide it off. And then your shims go under this seat, cup, whatever you want to call it. And then you just shim it up and you use this micrometer until you reach close to the installed height of your springs, which these are 1.8, which is right there. So that's 1.8. That's 1.805, 1.81, 1. See, and it's the inches. This one goes from 1.6 to 2.2. I don't know. Let's see. So there's 2 inches. Yeah, it goes to 2.2 and some change. These come in different sizes, so you just get, yeah, 2.2. That's how high it goes. But these come in different sizes. They ain't that much. They're like 30, 40 bucks or something. But anyway, I put the shims under the cup seat there, and then I just measure. I'll try 15. Well, I measure it first, and then, and it's not exact. If you got 1.815 and you put a 15 in there, it usually goes further. Well, the kit I've got, it usually goes about a few thousandths more than the shim is. But you definitely want to make sure that your shims and your seat cup thing are all cleaned up, because one little speck of dirt and throw your readings off a little bit. And I just keep shimming it until I get close to 1.8, and then after that, you know, the shims are in, the seat cup's in, and I carefully slide the seal back on, the valve seal back on, and then I put the spring on and the retainer, and then I push it down as far as I can. Actually, as I'm pulling it down, I'm pushing the spring this way, because that tool likes to send the spring up that way. And I push the spring down as far as I can with that tool, and then I put the locks in. And when I put the locks in, I'm using Vaseline on them. You can use grease. Grease probably works better. And then I put grease on them to help hold them in. And I tell you what, with that tool in the way and everything like that, it is a pain in the butt to get those on there and get them to stay without dropping them. But even though your retainer hole might not be lined up, that's fine, as long as your locks are in the groove and flat on the bottom. The bad thing about it is when you put the locks on and you try to push them in at the top, it pops them out on the bottom. So you got to make sure that they're up against the valve stem on the bottom. And then when you lift that up, the retainer will got up in there. Them locks shouldn't move if they're in the groove, and it'll eventually just work, the retainer will work itself into the lock. So it don't have to be perfectly centered when you start bringing the pressure off that spring to get the retainer to go in the locks. And that's it. And then you can back the motor over and pull your string out after you get both of them on per cylinder. You got to do them both on per cylinder. Back it off, take your rope out, and then again, intake closed. Turn the motor over just a little bit. That'll put you on the base load. You put your rocker arms on, put your push rods in, make sure they go into the lifter down there in the bottom. And then put your rocker arm on flat side up. There's a little flat side on these. The poly lock has to go flat side up. And you just screw your poly lock down until you got no up and down movement on your push rod. Don't do the spin thing, that don't work. You're looking for up and down movement. Once you got that, then you set your preload. Now on these, I'm just doing like 1/8 of a turn, just enough to get it off the plunger, off the retainer of the lifter. Now on most cars you do 1/4 to a 1/2 turn, and then once you got that, then you lock your poly lock and your Allen together. Usually what I do is I tighten the Allen up as tight as I can get it, and then I'll turn the nut and the Allen together about 1/8 of a turn to lock it all in. And that's how I've been doing it, and it's been working pretty good. But I'll finish these up, and we'll start it and break them in like I mentioned before. All right, so we got some shims for the valve springs. We're going to go ahead and finish those up today. These are 0.015, 0.030, and 0.060. I bought these all as a kit together. It's like 25 bucks. 475 it's 475-16. There's 16 in a pack. Now, some videos I was watching, they said to measure them all, and then whatever one needed the most to do them all that way. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make them all as even as I can with whatever shim it needs. So some measurements that you need to take when you order parts for these things is you need to know your seat width from edge to edge, because if you need another cup or seat or whatever, you also need to know the valve stem size, which most small block Chevy are 11/32, and that's this from my finger to my thumb measurement. You also want to know the valve guide size. So if you're real careful with these, you can pull these off, and these are pretty much brand new, so we're going to try to reuse them. So I'm just going to be real easy with it. Whoops, that ain't good. Yeah, I can put that back. Those are you. That popped right off for me last time, and I popped it right back on. It's kind of hard to do with one hand though. There we go. Anyway, I'll put that metal thing back on there. So there's your valve guide. You got to measure it from side to side. And then also another measurement you want to make is you want to put your retainer and lock on there and mark the bottom of it. And you want to measure from the bottom of that to the top of your seal that I just took off. And you want to make sure that that distance is more than the lift of your cam. If not, your lock retainer is going to hit your valve seal, and that's not going to be good. But anyway, when you put these shims in, you put them below the seat or the cup or whatever they call these things. So there we go. We got that out. Now this thing, this is aluminum, and them springs are under a lot of pressure. So you definitely don't want the spring going straight into the head, because that'll chew your aluminum up. Now also you want to make sure the measurements from here, or this inside and this, or match your springs. And I already matched this one up to the spring. It actually fits our springs better than it fit the old springs. Same thing with your retainer. Make sure that it fits your springs good. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my measurements like that with the little special micrometer I got. If you watch my last video, we were actually putting this upside down, making it hard to read. Put that on there like that. Make sure that we got the seat and everything in. And then we put I'm gonna have to bring it down. And then we're going to put the retainer and lock on it, and then we're going to adjust it out and see what our measurement is. Alright, so I'm not sure how good you can see that, but we're at 1.836, 37, somewhere in there. 1.83. We're going to call it 36. 1.836. So a 30 shim would put us right about on 1.8. A 45 would put us lower. We don't have any 45 shims, but I'm sure you could stack those. So also, when you put these locks in, retainers, whatever, I think this is the retainer and these are the locks, but anyway, when you put those in, you can use grease on those and it'll help hold them if you're having a hard time, you know, holding them and everything like that. But 1.836. All right, let's go do some math. 1.806 would be a 30. And then a 45 would be 1.79. Two or something like that. Let me use a calculator. 34, yeah. Because I'd rather it be tighter than looser, because the tighter you'll have more spring pressure. So I'm shooting for like a 179. That's what I'm actually shooting for. Let's see. Alright, so with a 45 in there, it should be 1.791. And then I'd rather it be that than 1.806. Even though the 1.806 would be closer to our target. Alright, so these shims, you take them out of the package, these 15s, they really like to stick together. So we'll put those in there. It's not a perfect fit, but that's the best size I could find. And it fits pretty good. Alright. And then we'll put the seat back in. And we'll take us another measurement and see what we got. So obviously, this isn't an exact science, because that got us 1.785. Not sure how good you can see that. That's a little too low, so I'm going to take the 15 out. See what that gets us. So with just the 30 shim, look at there, dead on 1.800. So that one's good. And I'm going to mark, I'm going to go get a piece of paper or just a piece of cardboard, and I'm going to mark what I put each one of them to as we go. that one's good. We can go ahead and put the valve seal back in this one, put the spring on it, and then put the retainer and locks in. That one is done. Alright, so we put the valve seal back on. Just be easy with it. Push it right back straight down on there, and you'll feel it lock in place. There it is. Then we'll take this spring, put it over there, make sure we're all lined up, put the retainer on, and now we're going to need our tool. Now the tool, it works pretty cool. You got a 7/16 side, and you can flip this over and there's a 3/8 side. He's got 7/16 on this one. See if I can get it threaded on with one end here. We're pretty sure we're on the right side. Whoops. I might have to set this down so I can get it. So I got it screwed on there. And this thing right here, it adjusts too. You can screw it up and down as needed. And then you just center it up there and put the handle on it. And here's the handle. And you just push it down. Kind of try to get it to line up straight. Might have to use two hands for this too to get it to line up straight, so I can get the retain or get the locks in there good. Or actually, you know what? Yeah, one more. Well, putting that in there was a little bit of a pain in the butt because I pushed down, the spring wanted to go that way, so it's hard to get that bottom retainer in there. But it's in, and that one's done. Just like that. Now we gotta redo this one. This one's still got the 7-degree lock and retainer where we was fooling with it before, but that retainer, a little bit too small for those new springs. Plus it needs shim too, so we're gonna move on to that one. To take these off, you just screw this on. Nope. Don't know where I'm pointing the camera. Got it pointing everywhere. There we go. Yeah, it should be good enough. Screw it all the way on there. If you raise it up like that, it makes it easier, obviously. Radiator hose is kind of in the way on this one. And then doing it one-handed, that don't help. That's pretty much it right there. And you bring it around this way. Put that right there. Put the handle on her. Push down till your locks pop off. See? And they popped off. And that one went for a ride. This will stay down if you push it all the way down. Another thing that helps is a little magnet. So you can fish these out of here. You don't want those to drop down in your oil hole. Right there. Not sure if they'd fit or not. But either way. You don't want those to go down in there. But once you get the locks off, you can back this off. Nice and easy. And then take your retainer and spring out. And then we're going to take the seal out and the seat and do some measuring and do just like we did the other one. So again, not sure if you can see that or not, but it's right at 1.83. So we're going to try 30 in this one as well. And these shims are actually coming out a lot thicker than what the micrometer is telling me. Look, that one's dead on 1.8. That's what we want. Alright, these two are done. And that's it. I'm going to turn the motor over to let the pressure off that string down there. I'm going to pull the string out. And I'm going to turn the motor over until the intake closes. Look, it's already coming up. So I'm going to let it close. Once it closes, I'm going to stick that string in this hole and I'm going to do these. But I'm gonna set the rockers later. I'll just set the rockers all together later once I get all the springs on. All the spark plugs are out, so that's going to let the motor turn over. Anytime you do something like this, it's best just to take all the spark plugs out. If you don't take the spark plugs out, like, you'd have a really hard time turning this one over if the spark plug was in it without the rocker arms on it, because your exhaust and intake valve aren't opening and closing, and you're just going to be building pressure on every stroke, and that make things really difficult. So yeah, take the spark plugs out when you do stuff like this. Here is intake, compression, power, exhaust. Intake, compression, power, exhaust. So the exhaust opens and closes, and then the intake opens and closes, and then it comes up to the compression stroke, and that's where we want to be at when we take these out. You want to turn the motor over counterclockwise just a little bit, get the tension off this. See, it won't pull out, and then pull the string out, and then we're going to stick the string back in this hole and do the same thing on this one. I'll do all of them same way, just like that. Another tip that I found on these 7-degree locks, man, they do not want to come out, and I'm having to push this tool a lot harder than I want to. Actually looks like it bent a little right there. I don't know if it's made like that or not, but anyway, if you take a socket just big enough to fit over the locks and hit it a few good times with a hammer like that, it'll help break that loose and make it a lot easier to pop those off. Usually you don't have that issue with these 10-degree locks, but those 7-degree locks, man, they don't like to come out. But I hit all around them on the edges with a hammer, and then I took that socket and put it right over the top of it like that. Find one big enough to fit over the top of it, and just give it a good whack with a hammer a few times, and that'll help break that loose. Alright, so I got those 4 done. Got these off. I've noticed that putting a pair of needle nose like this right here, well, it's hard to do with one hand, but yeah, needle nose underneath these pops them off a little bit better. See, that's way better. Pops those off way better than doing it from the top with the channel locks, because from the top, from the channel locks, I was trying to tear that top metal piece off. But yeah, also another thing I noticed was when you're trying to put the locks back in, when you push this down, the spring goes crooked. The spring goes crooked when you're pushing it down, and but once you push it all the way down, it straightens up so you can put the locks in. And also, you can use grease, but I've been using Vaseline on the locks here to help hold them on, because they when you put them in, you're putting them in at the top, and it's hard to get your finger at the bottom, and the bottom likes to bow out on you. It'll go like that. So yeah, kind of a pain in the butt, but I found out using that socket and extension on top of those and hitting on them before you even try to take them off makes a big difference. I'll be honest with you, I pushed on these a little bit harder than I probably should have, and so I'm definitely going to do a compression test on these. But I wished I'd have done that on these two, is with that socket and extension, just like that, and then just hit it with a hammer real good right there, 2 or 3 good licks, and it pops it loose. And then when you go to take it off with this, it comes right off easy. So yeah, so 12 more to go. All right. I got this side done. This one was a pain in the butt. It scares me pushing on them that hard because I'm afraid I'll bend the valve, even though, you know, it is just pushing up against rope. But put the rocker arms back in, make sure down here the flat side's up. I just put them at 0 and then tighten the nut and the Allen together. It probably went 1/8 of a turn, just enough to get it off the retainer clip on the lifter, because I don't want the lifter plunger beating against the retainer clip, so I'm told. So I did that. I turned the motor over, make sure nothing hit, because sometimes if these retainers are too big, they'll start hitting on the rocker arm. So I turned the motor over, made sure everything didn't hit with a wrench, turned it over with a wrench, and then I went to do a compression test and the battery's dead, but that's promising. It barely turned over and it shot up to 180. This motor, 180 to 190 on each cylinder, but I'm gonna do a compression test as I go through these. So after the battery charges up, I'm gonna go ahead and compression test all these, make sure I got the valve set right, and make sure everything's good, no bent valves from pushing real hard down on that rope, which I doubt it happened, but best to check. That one in the back, the very last one before the back, I mean, I like to never got that one off there. Finally, I just got a big socket and a big hammer, and I just kept hitting over the top of the retainer, and it finally knocked the locks out. So it's time to do this side. So the old springs are all marked with a red. I know you can't see that, but see, red mark, and the new ones are marked with a yellow mark. See the yellow mark? So make sure I didn't get nothing mixed up. So I just looked through all of them, make sure yellow, 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 and yellow. So those are all done. And like I said, these rockers are really easy to set, man, with the poly locks, especially if the poly locks turn really good. All you got to do is exhaust comes up, closes, intake comes up, closes, turn the motor over just a little bit more, you're on the base lobe on both of them. I just turn this until it's lightly, until it stops turning, with me just lightly turning it, and make sure I got no up and down movement here. I also watch the front of the rocker, because sometimes you'll get a spongy lifter and it'll push down even when you're barely turning this. So you want to make sure the front of the rocker arm don't start moving down. It should all go down together. You know, once you're on the push rod, you don't want to see that going down, but then you just, until it stops turning. The guide plates that he's got in here, you can't get your hand in here. I done it last time with the intake off, but you don't have that option with the intake on. See how the valve guides, the guide plates are raised up? You can't get your finger in there to feel the up and down movement. So we did it that way. And then I just tighten the Allen and the nut up together to lock them down. They're all locked down, good to go. But yeah, if your valve locks are stuck, don't push real down hard on your tool, because it'll bend your tool. Into Proform tools, it's working pretty good, but it started bending a little on some of them. Hopefully it makes it through the rest of these, but if you have that problem, just use a socket that'll fit over the lock on the retainer and just hit it a few good times, break it loose, maybe even tap around the edges of the retainer until it pops loose. You should be able to push that tool down, it should pop right off. Now if you got 10-degree locks and retainers, it shouldn't be that big of a deal, but if you got the 7-degree, man, they stick, and they stick good. And that's good if you ever hit valve float, because you know, you hit valve float, you don't have to worry about your locks coming off your retainer. Now on the 10 degrees you hit valve float, I'm told that there is a possibility that the locks will come off the retainer, and if it does, you're gonna have a bad day, because piston's gonna drop down in your, or valve's gonna drop down in your cylinder, and that's probably gonna be the end of your motor. But anyway, I'm gonna charge the battery, compression check all these. If it looks good, I'll put the valve cover back on, call this one done, put the plug, or not gonna put the plugs in until I get this side done, and then I'm gonna finish up this side. But that's pretty much gonna be it. I'll show y'all how it sounds once we get it started up. Once we get it started up, I'm gonna run it through a few heat cycles. I'm gonna let it heat all the way up to operating temperature and shut it off, let it cool all the way down, and I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna start it up, just let it idle, heat all the way up. I'm gonna shut it off and let it cool all the way down. That should put enough heat cycles in there, and then I'll just drive around easy for 30-40 minutes, and then I'm gonna get on it and see if it'll hit 7,000. As long as it hits 7,000 without valve float, that's fine with me, because we probably ain't gonna twist it no further than that. So, but I'll get a video of that for sure. Another thing on this, when you do these, I didn't do it, but you probably should cover up these holes up here and these holes on the ends, because some of these, when I put that socket and extension over this and hit on it, some of the locks flew out. Luckily they fell down in here or on the ground. I got one on the other side. One of these 7 degrees I dropped on the ground. I couldn't find it. I'm gonna have to back the car up to find it, but and watch me knock one down in there. But if you knock one down in there, you're gonna have a hard time getting it out. But I guess it depends on where it goes, because I got that magnet, and it is very, very helpful working on these. If you got one of these magnets, it makes a big difference. Actually, I don't think I could have done it without that magnet. But I'm on the last two. See, just like that one, it popped out, but it went on the ground. I heard it. And we're all done. The springs on it before were red, so we got all yellow. The rockers are set. Now I just got to put in the plugs, the spark plug wires, put the valve pan covers on, and hook our catch can up, and it's all good. And here's what I come up with. Got 1.8 on one, 1802, 1805, 1805, 1799, 1799, 1.799, 1791, 1.8, 1792, 1789, 1801, and 1787. That's the shortest one. 1799, 1802. So you can be plus or minus 0.020. We're minus 0.013 and plus 0.002. That should be 002. Whoops. There we go. Yeah. And down here we're minus 1.1001 and plus 0.005. So we are for sure in spec. That one's the lowest one, and so is that one. But if I put the 15 in there, they were a little bit higher than what I liked. So like I said, them shims and the micrometer is an exact science on those. The 15 shim was giving me like 20 plus, 0.02 plus, and the 30 shim was almost giving me 0.04 according to the micrometer. But either way, some of them just took a 15, most of them took a 30, and some of them took a 30 and a 15. But that should work right there. I turned the motor over a couple of times, make sure nothing was hitting, so that's all good, and we'll get it started up. All right. Let's see how she starts. 2 pumps. Started right up. Good oil pressure. Idle about 900. The dogs don't like the sound, but let's see. No noise. Sounds good. Back it out and let it warm up. We'll do 2 heat cycles before we test drive it. There we go. We'll do 2 heat cycles, and then we'll take it for a test drive and see if that cutout issue at about 65, 6,700 RPM is gone. All right, we're doing heat cycle 2 on the springs. It took the car over 3 hours to cool down. I didn't think it'd take that long. There, it's already back up to temp almost. We'll let it get a little higher, but as long as it takes the cool down, I'm probably gonna have to do the highway rip tomorrow to see if it'll go up to or over 7,000 RPM. All right, we're gonna go make a rip in this Trans Am, see what it does, see if we fixed it. it hit 7,000 RPM, but the belt configuration did not like 7,000 RPM. And I'll be honest with you, I got the car way hotter than we wanted to before we noticed it was overheating. So I hope we didn't hurt anything. But on a plus note, it goes up to 7,000 RPM now. Alright, I had a spare belt. So I had my, it's a war belt, it's for emergencies only, but I had my son-in-law bring me the spare belt and some tools, and we changed it on the side of the road, put a little water in it, and it's fine. Get on the highway, it drops down real low. Look there, it's dropping already after starting it. But yeah, runs fine, so we didn't hurt anything, which I'm really surprised, because I got this thing stupid hot before I noticed that it was overheating. Christopher built a heck of a motor, son. You can't kill this thing. I've overheated it like that twice. It actually got up to 270 that time. I got it up to 250 once when the belt come off last time. And that was my fault, because the belt that I had on it, it was too long. And I was out of adjustment, but it still felt kind of tight. So we went with it. And it actually stayed on. It's 6,500 RPM, but it's 7,000 RPM. It ain't staying on. So definitely going to have to get a shorter belt, fix that, and then that's it. Chris will be down October. He ordered a 500 plate kit for it. So we're going to put that on there and change the plugs and see if we can't get this thing into the 9s.